Will Hearst was on his way to flunking out of Harvard when he decided what he really wanted was a poor San Francisco newspaper his dad happened to own. His father was unenthusiastic. What about the Anaconda Mine instead? Or a million-acre ranch? No, just the paper. "There's only one thing that's sure about my boy Bill," said George Hearst. "When he wants cake, and he wants it now. And I noticed that after a while, he gets the cake."
This paper is going to be the biggest, most spectacular paper that the world has ever seen. He is going to first increase and then double and triple and quadruple circulation until everybody in San Francisco and Oakland and everywhere that the railroads can carry the Examiner are going to be reading it.
Will knew exactly what he wanted his paper to be. Splashy, brash, and common, with big type, pictures, and sensationally lurid news. At first, he didn't have the staff or the presses to turn out any more than 8 pages a day. No matter. His front page proclaimed the Examiner monarch of the dailies.
He didn't care if it had been printed before or the story was around. So take it and make it ours, as if we just discovered it, and forget the other people. Let them die. You know, it's our story. Hearst put 37 people on it. Let's go.
Will cut a strange figure in his city room. With dandified clothes and a walking stick, he still had the air of a college boy, excited by his latest prank. He was personally shy, with exquisite manners, never ordering his staff about, but asking, politely, in his high, girlish voice. But they soon learned his requests were orders, even if it cost them months of effort, or cost his father a fortune.
He literally went out and created news. For example, he hired a woman to collapse in the streets just so he could test what kind of response the city had. And he published this damning expose of how they treated indigent women. He had one of his reporters go out on a ferry into the middle of San Francisco Bay and jump overboard just to see how long it would take to have someone rescue them.
Silly, childish, but delivered with excitement. And it was great. Men worked in places where you could barely see, which I think might have helped the stories because you didn't have to worry too much about facts. You just fill the pages. I guess they lied openly. There was first gaslight, wavery gaslight, and they worked at like artist easels, and they wrote longhand, and they smoked pipes and cigars, no cigarettes. You needed something big that would make a lot of smoke.
From the clouds in his city room emerged a ferocious little paper. Hearst's staff called itself the Wrecking Crew. In a celebrated murder trial, the Examiner covered the prosecution. And then, when it was the defense's turn, Hearst pulled his reporter out of the courtroom. He'd already judged. The defendants were guilty. He went after his enemies in a way San Francisco had never seen. When he attacked the Southern Pacific Railroad, he didn't just investigate its service and its rates. He called its passengers survivors and printed the names of railroad directors with $signs in place of the letter S.
And Willie takes on the S&P in a way that no other newspaper had done, in such sustained, concentrated, in ferocious form. He doesn't let up. He's like a dog that gets hold of your leg, and no matter how much you shake, or smack the dog over the head, he's not going to let go. That's what Willie was.
His plan was bold, and it would take him a long way. Hearst was making a paper for the poor who never had one. The immigrants, the working masses, they would be his readers, and he would be their champion. He meant to raise the name of Hearst to heights his father never dreamed of. If that made enemies along the way, well, that was too bad. For them.
I came to see you about this campaign of yours. This Inquirer campaign against the public transit company.
Mr. Thatcher, do you know anything we could use against them?
Still the college boy, aren't you?
Oh, no, Mr. Thatcher. I was expelled from college. A lot of colleges, you remember. I remember.
Charles, I think I should remind you of a fact that you seem to have forgotten.
Yes.
That you are yourself one of the largest individual
Mr. Thatcher.
stockholders in the public transit company.
The trouble is you don't realize you're talking to two people. As Charles Foster Kane, who owns 82,364 shares of public transit preferred, you see, I do have a general idea of my holdings. I sympathize with you. Charles Foster Kane is a scoundrel. His paper should be run out of town. A committee should be formed to boycott him. You may, if you can form such a committee, put me down for a contribution of $1,000.
My time's
On the
too
other
bad.
hand, I am the publisher of the Inquirer. As such, it's my duty, and I'll let you in on a little secret. It's also my pleasure to see to it that decent, hard-working people in this community aren't robbed blind by a pack of money-mad pirates just because they haven't anybody to look after their interests.
In Citizen Kane, Orson Welles painted Hearst as a young man who tore at his enemies with a fierce joy.
If I don't look after the interests of the underprivileged...
Was Welles unaware that Hearst would come after him just as fiercely?
And that would be
Money and
too
property.
bad.
Well, I happened to see your financial statement today, Charles.
Oh, did you?
Now, tell me honestly, my boy, don't you think it's rather unwise to continue this philanthropic enterprise? This Inquirer that's costing you $1 million a year?
You're right, Mr. Thatcher. I did lose $1 million last year. I expect to lose $1 million this year. I expect to lose $1 million next year. You know, Mr. Thatcher, at the rate of $1 million a year, I'll have to close this place in 60 years.